This is CounterPoint. I'm your host, Tanya Granic Allen. We're back with our current events panel with lots of commentary on the latest headlines. We're going to discuss the recent legislation passed allowing pesticides. We'll cover the recent spate of social media bans in the world. We'll dive into the recent EU law passed tackling illegal immigration. And speaking of the EU, we'll briefly discuss the horrific gang rape report out of the UK, which alleges over 250,000 victims, pretty much all of them minors, while state agency turned a blind eye. And we'll finish it off with some World Cup news, with Argentina's creative way in forcing delinquent fathers to pay child support. Lots to get through, and join me now are political commentators Brock Stephenson and Vegh. Brock, Aaron, great to have you on today. Lots to get through, some obviously very disturbing, heavier topics, and then some lighter ones. But why don't we start with this pesticide ban? So, well, it's a law that has been overturned that formally banned pesticides. Maybe, Brock, you start us off on this.
So the federal government has deemed that these pesticides are unsafe, but they also have said they're now fine to use. There's a group of scientists from 13 universities that have denounced the new legislation. It's the largest overhaul in pesticide rules in a generation, and there's a fair bit of outrage that although these pesticides have been considered unsafe, they're now being allowed in. There was a strong lobbying effort from the crop life advocacy group, and the government is going ahead with these changes in a time where people are more and more concerned about what goes into their food. And you're seeing places in the States like Ohio where there have been such few pesticide rules, and it's now on their water table, and that part of the U.S. is seeing a higher than average cancer rate. So you're starting to see more and more concern, and the government's gone away from consumer safety on this, but the crop lobby seems to be happy. So we'll see how it unfolds.
But this seems bizarre. You're right, Brock, to point out this seems like a departure from typical legislative strategy for most governments. Aaron, this is coming from the Liberal government, no less. The authors of carbon taxation and eco-friendliness. Why is this happening?
Yeah, Brock is right about the lobby interest group there, but it does seem to have skipped the entire debate process to allow other vested interest groups to have their say in a committee hearing, and of course with the scientific authorities before it gets passed and tucked into this large omnibus bill. So I think the Liberal government has sort of got betrayed their own value when it comes to this, because the countries that have banned these pesticides, specifically strychnine, which is a nerve agent, have banned it based on the adverse effects on the ecological and biodiversity. So yes, Alberta, Saskatchewan have ground squirrel problems. Gopher problems are all over, and it causes a lot of economic damage. But there needs to be a better public debate before just allowing a nerve agent that's going to kill off likely owls and wildlife. Now, notwithstanding that being said, they did say it can only be used for a very limited season, short times. But just the whole idea of enforcing that, seeing how that's going to play out, it would have been better if that was allowed to have a larger debate and more publicity before removing such a ban.
Yeah, because isn't that the point of the House of Commons, that people gather and debate things, and things aren't just passed like in a dictatorship, for example? This seems crazy. I recognize there's a place for pesticides, but one must follow the science. Everything should be tested rigorously, because as you rightfully pointed out, Brock, that places like Ohio that have lifted or that haven't been so aggressive on this policy now have contaminated water tables. When we have farms that have moved away sort of from the family farm, and now we're doing like large scale, like tens, hundreds of thousands of acres of crop, especially in mid-western Canada, in the prairies. I mean, this is a lot. This could have huge ramifications. And again, nobody's looking to handcuff farmers. I mean, we need to grow food. I get that. But Europe manages to do it with very strict pesticide laws. Are either of you familiar with how the EU handles things?
Yeah, it's a much more rigorous process, and it seems that what's happened here is this opening of such a powerful pesticide in Canada reverses decades of science and sort of international agreement that you don't just allow such a strong nerve agent to go wild for even a short period of time. So definitely, it's going to affect our political landscape, because if the Liberals are willing to tuck in sort of controversial ecological measures or a lack thereof in an omnibus bill, then it's going to change the political landscape. There was a lot of questions raised by the Quebecois and, of course, the Green Party. But that was in the question period rather than it going to a larger committee and debate period. So I think the Liberals have let down their environmental support group on such a passing of this bill.
Okay, well, we're going to have to follow the fallout. We'll be right back. Welcome back to CounterPoint. We're joined with our current events panel, and I'm joined by Brock Stephenson and Aaron Vegh. Brock, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Bill 34, which seeks to propose or limit social media use. It's really a social media ban for minors in Canada. This follows on the heels of, it seems like, many other jurisdictions that are doing it, but interestingly, almost all at the same time, very concurrent. Brock, unpack what this bill is about.
So, following in the footsteps of Australia, and I guess now the UK, Canada is bringing forward legislation to prevent children 16 and under from accessing social media. There's concerns on a variety of levels here: freedom of speech, parental choice, concerns about digital IDs coming in and being the standard under a new regime. Which I think is a big concern, given how much concern there has been about Mark Carney and his ties to the World Economic Forum in Davos. That there's going to be some outrage over that, but I think he's trying to move quickly and break stuff, sort of in the model of the social media companies he's trying to crack down on. And we're now seeing Canadians stumbling to react. Another problem with this is smart, innovative children in Canada are going to be handcuffed and limited from their advances in technology and creativity, and you're going to see kids from other countries that don't have this ban sort of be the leader of the next generation. A lot of Canadian tech entrepreneurs got their start here before moving to Silicon Valley or elsewhere. There's going to be less Canadian startups that emerge as world beaters in the future if you're seeing younger people banned from having social media access. And on a second note, you're also seeing VPNs that allow people to pretend they're not accessing it from Canada consider pulling out of Canada because of the stricter rules that the Canadian government's putting in place.
Well, I never thought about the potential decline in innovation amongst that cohort, because I always think, oh, are 15-year-olds really entrepreneurial? But yes, they are. They are. And you see a lot of content creators starting in their teenage years. So that's interesting. I never thought about the effects of this ban from a competition perspective. Aaron, why don't you weigh in here? What are your concerns with this ban, if any?
Well, I think the main concern is that if we are going to protect our minors, the best way is to enforce strict laws against predators and target predators that are targeting our minors online, rather than punishing minors who, the majority, I'm sure, are wanting to be on social media, connect with their friends and their different peer groups. So just creating a blanket ban has no real virtue or substance behind it. I mean, it's a response to obviously ongoing trends in, criminology with people preying on minors online. But, I would just ask everyone to go back 20 years when you were a minor and you had access to the internet, and, you had MSN, Facebook was just coming out, all these different social media platforms. There was no ban. And so, what is it going to do? It's just going to create more creativity of how to surpass the bans. And there will be young people figure out ways to just go around it. It's not very, it's very difficult to police a huge segment of the population, especially when usually the younger generation's on the cutting edge of technology and, perhaps bypassing any sort of protocol like this.
No, absolutely. And I mean, look, I'm not a fan of social media. I am very delinquent in posting. I always say, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. But it's just.
You never accept my friend request.
I know there's probably
I'm
like
just kidding.
I'm brutal. But to me, this says, like, why do I need the government to parent my kid? Like, if I don't want my child on social media, I mean, I obviously have problems with myself on social media, but I don't need the government to intervene. I don't need Big Brother. I think parents should be equipped. I think they should equip themselves and parent, and we don't need all these bans. Again, I'm not a big fan of social media. When this first was announced, I'm like, oh, good. There's so many harms in social media. This is probably good. But I'm like, well, no, I don't need the government telling me what to do. But
Well, yeah, and it's like attempting to ban alcohol in the early 20th century. It just never worked. If anything, it just created more ways to bypass such draconian legislation.
right. So I find it bizarre. I also find it why it's all happening concurrently. Like, why now? Why is this happening all at the same time? It makes you wonder, like, what's really going on here? But anyways, we can speculate. We'll see what happens with this legislation. Yeah, it's quite interesting. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our current events panel. Joining me again are Brock Stephenson and Aaron Vegh. We're going to switch gears now to an exceptionally devastating and serious and catastrophic topic. One I never thought I would have to discuss on this show, but here we are. We're going to talk about the gang rape inquiry report out of the UK, where according to this report, this inquiry, children victims, most of them children, number upwards of 250,000, where children were groomed by rape gangs, and allegedly, social services, government agencies, police, all turned a blind eye. Maybe Aaron, you start us off on this one. This is, I don't have words for this. I really don't.
Yeah, this is unprecedented. I mean, there is precedence for it in terms of medieval takeover of another nation, predominantly Islamic nations, let's say invading southern Europe and pillaging European villages, and of course that creating a response. But that's over 1,000 years ago, and in some cases largely forgotten by our public education system. The main issue is that because this is largely perpetrated by an ethnic group and a predominantly powerful political religious ethnic group, they have a lot of power, and people are afraid to just call it the elephant in the room instead of dealing with it. So you're right, there was a gross failure from the head of the government, from the federal police, social services. These things are very well documented, they're well known. And also, even though many of them have been the perpetrators have been sent to jail. The sentences are quite weak, from 8 to 10 years. But as you mentioned, these sexual assaults are gross, and they ruin these victims' lives. And 250,000, 250,000, and that's just what they know of. This is just unheard of, especially in our Western society. So it's going to create a large sort of pushback that's going to have adverse effects, I think, on the governments that have allowed this to take place. But it is a horrifying event, and it's something that is of a larger trend of social DEI sort of analysis of the world, to allow unfettered migration and to disregard the sovereignty of one's nation. I mean, the inevitable has happened. And so there is a plethora of historical precedents that have shown villages that have not properly protected themselves have been, quote unquote, raped and pillaged. And in one sense, to have the young women and young girls that have experienced this, whom represent the fertility and the future of the nation, to have been so sexually abused like this is a huge setback. And I would say an act of terrorism on the United Kingdom and any Western nation that has faced the same.
Yeah, I mean, strong words, but warranted, because this is just brutal. Brock, speak to me about the failure of the system. Why do I have to read reports? I only got through about 20 pages because I couldn't. It was horrific to read what these girls have been through. 10 years old, 11 years old, 13 years old. The police knew in some cases, social services knew, and they did nothing. They purposely did nothing.
The structure of the society's supports, I think, across a lot of the West is falling apart. Enforcing law and order used to be a minimum standard, and now it's going above and beyond. And I think you're seeing this problem in the UK on the rape gang issue, but you're also seeing it in parts of Canada, particularly in BC, where drug enforcement was more or less abandoned. They legalized some drugs, but they also didn't enforce anything on the drugs that they hadn't softened the rules on. You're seeing more and more where doing what's right and enforcing the law is a step too far for police and the justice system, and you're getting this problem in the UK, a terrible problem. And as the UK abandoned Europe, it sort of left its other flank open. And as the originator of global migration and multiculturalism, they really seem to struggle with figuring out how to integrate these newcomers to Britain. And you're getting Restore Britain crying bloody murder for these 250,000 girls that have been victimized. And it's like no one cares. And now the Labour Party's in flux, is going to spend the summer deciding who their new prime minister is, and they're going to waste even more time. So I don't think things in the UK are going to improve anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, we're going to talk more about this issue and a new EU law passed regarding strict migration when we return just a moment. Welcome back to Counterpoint. Joining me are Brock Stephenson and Aaron Vegh as we unpack a host of issues that are happening currently. In the previous segment, we're discussing the UK gang rape inquiry report, which was catastrophic and devastating, but laid bare the sheer craziness amount of victims, 250,000 upwards, and what was most jarring, not just that there were that many victims, but the failure of the system to do anything. I'll ask this to both of you: is this, and I know you hinted at this, Aaron, maybe I'll start with Brock then. Is this a case of where like political correctness has run amok? And because it sounded like a lot of these agencies were scared to do anything because they were afraid of being deemed as racist, because the majority of perpetrators, I think about 90% or so, were from one South Asian community, predominantly Pakistani Muslim.
The pendulum doesn't seem to be swinging back in the UK the way it is in other parts of the West. I think they're so concerned that it is a big problem.
Wow. Aaron, again, political correctness run amok?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if this was just a general crime wave, we would have known about it 10 or 15 years ago in the mainstream media. But because it is coming from predominantly a different group with a strong political ideology, political religious ideology, of course, people are afraid. And the ultimate fear would just go right back to, let's say, the Charlie Hebdo incident in France. You bring any light or attention or any sort of awareness to a situation like this, and if they cry, oh, this is religious persecution, or you're just being racist, then there's that ramification, that there's the political ramification, but then there's also a direct threat of terroristic threats, which are well documented throughout Europe.
Wow. Okay, let's sort of shift gears. And maybe this is a reaction to this kind of failure of policy, but the EU has, this was shocking for many people, the EU has passed now strict migration laws. So this is the strictest ever they've passed. And I think it passed about a 2-to-1 majority. Brock, what happened there?
So the European Parliament, which is one of the governing bodies of the EU, is bringing in return regulation, which is its strictest migration policy in decades. They're trying to figure out how to send back the unwanted migrants that found their way into the EU, and this has been a big issue for decades.
And when you say unwanted, are these like criminal migrants or people who've illegally entered, like that kind of thing?
Illegal entry in general.
Okay, gotcha. Aaron, what do you think about this? We've heard, well, we know that, when it was the Syrian war and other wars, that a lot of migrants came into Europe. Europe welcomed them with open arms. But then some people were not entering through the legal refugee programs. And it sounds like this is maybe a page of Donald Trump's book where they're saying, no, if you entered illegally or you're criminal, we're sending you back.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to follow an exact American system, but I mean, since 2015, there has been large unfettered migration under the guise of, the Syrian war and all that. There are many other countries that these migrants could have gone to, but of course, because of the large and generous social policies of the West, specifically the Scandinavian countries and United Kingdom, they fled there. You will note there was a precipitous increase of crime and, as you mentioned, the rape gangs along the same timeline of this mass migration. But then, of course, if you contrast to countries of course, Hungary and Poland that were way more restrictive on their immigration policies, you'll notice that their crime has not gone up at the same time. So this pushback is, I think, very late in coming. It should have already been in place. People should be vetted, obviously, before they're allowed into the country. And we don't know people's criminal history. It's very important, or lack thereof. It's important to discover what is their history before letting someone in the country. And if they do have a criminal record, why are they allowed in? Many
Right.
of the migrants actually already have criminal records, but we don't access them and we don't properly connect to their local police departments from where they're coming from. So there's been a huge lack of administrative oversight. And hopefully this law or these series of laws will help stem the tide of a sovereign decline in Europe.
Okay, let's switch gears. We only have about 30 seconds left. Argentina came up with a creative way to get men to pay child support. Aaron, they're not allowed. They're not allowed at the World Cup. Am I right?
Yeah, it's absolutely funny because they're leveraging alimony and delinquency of parental support. So I think it's a great measure. It's not punitive. It's just sort of leveraging the luxury and the benefits of attending a football game. So if they're able to successfully pull that off, that's amazing. Because last time I checked, you don't need such good identification to enter a football game. You can just buy tickets and go. So we'll see if they actually are able to enforce it and pull it off. But if it does have a motive to make people pay their child support and get out of their rears in that regard, then I think it's a great incentive. And leveraging luxury social benefits like that is sort of unheard of in the West. So good on them for trying that out, and we'll see if it ever comes to Canada.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you both so very much.